Welcome to the TryPod, where we break down the NRL every game, every week from a punting perspective. Guys, last week I failed you. I'll get into that with the round 23 wrap. That's going to include all the best bets. We had four. We went 2-2. That snapped a winning streak, snapped a streak of winning rounds. But it's my fault, and I'll tell you all about it and my experience, including traveling from the Sunshine Coast to Brisbane on Saturday night to witness the humiliation and the hurt delivered by the Roosters onto the Finns in person. And as I say, that cost us because we went 2-2 in best bets, but we would have gone 3-2 if I wasn't a coward. And, I tried to be as honest as possible about how little confidence I had in my team. And I really tried to explain, that the Roosters could be a good bet there. But I just couldn't bring myself to make the Roosters a best bet against my Finns and then to go to the ground and then to be kind of secretly cheering against my side. I pretty much explained my feelings to you all there. But basically, if you're disappointed in me because you didn't bet on the Roosters because I didn't explicitly tell you to, you have a right to feel that way. I did let you down. So 3-2 if I wasn't a coward, and we'd be 60%. But instead, we're 59%, and we had our first non-winning week in 6 weeks. I do have 4 best bets to share tonight, and I'll do that straight away. And then we'll, as you can see, the scores from round 23. We'll do a rapid round the grounds after that. So I'm going to begin with Friday night. I'm going to take New Zealand Warriors race to 20. It's $1.80 on 365. They play the Dragons. It's an all-in spot for New Zealand. Couple of troops back. Dragons have just had 2 maximum effort games. I think New Zealand's a slightly better team, and at home with everything still to play for, I think they'll win, and I like that angle of race to 20. And then later Friday night, I'm going to play Roosters Dogs under 42.5. That's the total at $1.90 on Ladbrokes and Neds, because I basically think that's warfare. That's a cracker of a game. It's all in. It's highly important for the Roosters to finish top 8, highly important for the Dogs to finish top 2. And I think with a max effort, especially with the Dogs being such a good defensive side, and the Roosters have improved in that area as they sort of surge, trying to make their push towards the finals. You look at them the last couple of weeks. Adam says, why not the Warriors at the line, which is about -5.5. I just slightly preferred the race to 20, but I'll get into it when I get to that game. Then I'm taking on Sunday the Tigers +2.5 in the first half against Manly at $1.88 on Ladbrokes and Neds. I think the Tigers have every bit as much talent as Manly this week. Tigers are at home. Well, I think the game's at Allianz, so it's still in front of Tigers fans. Wests are off the bye as well, so they're fresh. I know it's incredibly meaningful for Manly, who are still trying to make the finals, but I just look at the sides sort of player for player, and I believe that the Tigers will come in and still fight to close out the season strong and show improvement. And I can't split those sides. I think West might win that game. So again, I'm playing with fire, playing a first half line where, what's happened many times this year is the tip's been correct and the team has won the game or covered. And in the first half, sort of there's more variance because one moment could hurt you, but there's also less points. So each point is more valuable. I'm going to play it that way. I have explained that sort of theory before. So maybe I can touch on it again with that game. But Tigers first half line 2.5, I reckon could easily be into 1.5 by game day. And then I'm going to play overs with the final game of the round. Cowboys Knights, I'll play over 45.5 at $1.82 on Sportsbet. I can get into all the reasons why when I cover that game last, but basically it's 2 teams with nothing to play for. And I think there can easily be 8 tries in that one, especially look at a team like the Cowboys at home. You can't trust them at all defensively, but when they've got the footy, they're actually still more than a handful. So those are my favorite 4 plays for round 24. Please tell me what you think of those in the comments, and also share your biggest takeaway of round 23. Let's try and whiz through these results. So Storm 22 beat the Broncos 2. I lost a best bet there. Now, I do believe it's fair to say +6.5. It closes 5.5. So we get through a key number. We get some line value. It looked like it was going to be a ripper of a game the first 20 minutes. It did look dead even, and you felt pretty good at +6.5. Obviously, all changes with that moment where the Broncos actually had a chance to score. Mam throws the intercept pass to Coates, and though he doesn't score, it's an amazing effort by Cobbo. It's probably even worse than giving up a try. You lose both starting halves 20 minutes into the game. And at that point, Brisbane still fought, had moments where it was within 2 tries. And obviously, if Brisbane could have cracked Melbourne, maybe we could have still covered, but we were a bit of a long shot with that catastrophe happening in the first half. And what I will say is I bet against Melbourne in Melbourne, and the Storm were on and were unpenetrable, apart from 2 points there. So even if Brisbane had remained at full strength for the game, it doesn't prove that we would have covered. Obviously, that snapped our winning streak, which hurt a little bit because that's a pretty crazy moment. And, if it had gone the other way and Melbourne had lost, Munster and Pappy in one play or something, then we'd probably get an easy win. But, that's how it goes. And Melbourne were red hot, and it really hurts Brisbane, obviously, because not just the chance of getting the win in Melbourne, which was always an outside shot, but obviously losing your halves for the final month of the season when Brisbane was trying to push for top 4. And now I think 5th or 6th, like a home elimination final, is going to be the best Broncos can hope for. And it's a challenging final month to navigate for the Broncos for sure. Panthers destroyed the Knights in the wet. So much for O'Brien saying that, his team's still showing a lot of effort. I mean, at home, and you still get, I don't know what the capacity, I don't know what the crowd was, but like whatever it was, 10, 15, 20,000 Knights fans coming out Friday night. The team's, been hopeless again this year, basically. Multiple key players are out, and it's just bucketing rain. It's monsoonal conditions, and the fans are still out there. And these are the same fans that the coach had a go at earlier in the year for booing. I mean, they are as loyal as the day is long, and they didn't get much in return. And Penrith made it 9 in a row, sort of doing what they did to the Titans, which was, I think, a 24-point halftime lead. I think the lead was about the same in this game. Was it not even 30-0? Because I know Penrith scored on the horn as well. But the difference was Penrith went on with this game. Then we had a winning best bet on Friday with the Raiders against Manly. Certainly did not get it all our own way. Manly was up, I think it was 12-10 or 12-8, like in the second half. But the Raiders sort of cracked them, and we get like 1 or 2 breakaway tries late, which is always a chance. And we were laying -6.5. Another game, we got closing line value. It didn't end up mattering because, as you can see, it was a 16-point win by the Raiders, 28-12. But it did close, I think, 8.5, 9.5 on game day. And the Raiders, important win to make sure they stay, they actually had to leapfrog Melbourne after Melbourne won on Thursday to stay in top spot on the ladder. Update for those who are on the minor premiership bet, we got $1.83. The Raiders are $1.46 right now. It's still up for grabs between the Raiders and the Storm. But the Raiders have they've got a 2-point lead on the ladder. So just have to match pace with Melbourne the rest of the way. Then we had another loss. So the second loss of the weekend, I laid the points with Cronulla, and the Dragons were the better team. I actually thought, if anything, the Sharks built a lead in this game on the back of some fortuitous moments, and I thought that might break the Dragons' spirits, but the Dragons kept coming. Boy, the Sharks were sloppy in the second half. Incredibly disappointing for Cronulla. I talked about how Cronulla's got a really manageable draw, but, home to Cowboys, away to Dragons, these are games you're $1.50, but that doesn't mean you're going to win. You've got to take care of business. The Sharks couldn't do that. And the Dragons, I said they'd have to back up that Raiders effort. They got them the win over the ladder leaders, and it was a repeat. I mean, the Dragons had a couple scratched during the week. Was it Buchanan? Was it his debut? He's out there in the centres with a tough matchup there. And the Dragons in the second half, despite some nervous moments, holding on there, and a tough win against a rival. And I have not given the Dragons enough respect. I can't complain about being 59% this season, but if I'm going to self-critique, I shouldn't have gone against the Dragons as often as I have. And I'm against them on Friday night this week too, and I'll get into that. I have self-awareness, but I also can't change, what I believe about teams. And look, that was a derby game, so in hindsight, you could understand that the Dragons, were all in for that at home. I still thought the Sharks should have had too much class, so I was disappointed in Cronulla, as I'm sure Fitzy was. But my disappointment was only compounded sitting in the stands at Suncorp for a 64-12 defeat to the Roosters. So I want to paint a picture for you. Okay, so on Tuesday, I mean, I listen. If you go back and listen to what I said about this game, I said have as little confidence as I have had in any Dolphins game this year. I said I look at it. We've just lost Herbie, and the Roosters clearly have the better back line than us. Sam Walker's as good as Katoa, and then the Roosters clearly have the better forward pack. So yeah, you're going to be a bit worried when the other team's got a clearly better forwards and clearly better backs, and maybe the halves are a wash. And then I tried to counter and say, oh, maybe a bit of spirit and home crowd and importance for Dolphins. We can fight, but I would go nowhere near Dolphins for a bet. And after doing the pod 7 days ago, I only felt worse about it during the week. I'm like, why didn't I just give out that best bet? But as I explained, it's literally an emotional thing of trying to be as objective as possible, but it is hard to bet against your own team when you go. I don't get to a game too often. And look, I didn't go to this Dolphins game on Saturday because I thought we're going to win, but sometimes you want to be there for games you don't think you're going to win, because if you do win, those are the most special ones. And so we're driving down there. I actually went to the game with a mate who, shout out to Heathy, who is a big Roosters fan. And I said to him, man, I think you're going to smash us as we're driving down there. And I said, honestly, if you don't win, you should be really disappointed because you're full strength. Our forward pack is so thin. We've lost Herbie. I'm so worried. We get to the ground. We walked in as it kicked off. I said, you're going to score before we even get to our seats. I just can feel it. Sure enough, we did sit down as Nwanga Tuaze had pinched an uncontested bomb. It's 12-0 before long. Then you get the double sin binning. To me, it's like some people might think, oh, it's a big call by the ref. He sin bin 4 players. It's really not when you just send 2 from each side. It was unnecessary. And then I thought, well, 11 on 11, it's a soccer match. We just have to get the ball. Whoever has the ball the next 10. And the Dolphins actually forced a drop ball by the Roosters and score a try. And I'm like, all right, well, that's what we had to do. And then got in attack, had another chance to score and blew it. I think Zarko fumbled it, and that was as close as it got. And I was saying, you're going to smash us here. And it's 30 by halftime, and I'm going, our points differential is in danger. The Dolphins had 150 plus minus advantage over the Roosters. And I'm like, you beat us by 60. That wipes out 120 of it. Obviously it's a plus for the Roosters and a minus for the Dolphins. So in some ways we get off lightly that it's a 52-point win, which included, I think it was not an intercept try, but the Dolphins did take an intercept late that set up a try. And, a 50-point win by the Roosters still means the Dolphins got about a 50-point plus minus advantage, which is significant with 4 games to go. But yeah, it was awful to be there, just sitting there, just watching the Roosters tear us apart. And I just thought the Roosters were dead set red hot. And I also thought that, sometimes the biggest blowouts are not the games that you expected a mismatch. It's the games where a team went in really believing they were going to win. And once they fell down 3 or 4 tries, their heads are just spinning. It's funny, like the Titans, if I give an example, a week ago are down 24-0 to the Penrith. But they don't panic because they're like, yeah, we're the Titans. We're down 24-0 to Penrith. Like we didn't expect to be in this position, but it's not a shock. Whereas the Dolphins were down 24-6 to the Roosters and down 36 to the Roosters and gone, geez, we need to start making some things happen. And it just actually gets worse. So sometimes the best games to bet on a blowout are the ones that are actually a little bit closer in the market. Massive missed opportunity by me. And I do apologize to you guys. It's not like I never bet against the Dolphins. I've gone against them. We had a winning best bet against them only recently with Cronulla, right? But on that occasion, I left one on the table. What if that ends up costing me a 60% season? That hurts me. And I think last week I talked about, really appreciating the support behind the pod. We had the most viewers or listeners of any show this season. And I maybe that was because you guys really interacted. I asked you guys, if you want to support the show, like hitting like during the show, afterwards, dropping a comment, it all does help. And I think that helped me with engagement. So thank you for that. But also probably because we were on a 7 best bet winning streak, I think like more people were tuning in. So I'll let myself down with that one. And of course it doubly hurt triple pain really, because my Finns lost. And I went all the way to Brisbane and back to watch it. Later, we got a win straight back, at least in terms of best bets. We had New Zealand under 16.5. They scored 14 in a 32-14 loss in the wet, but that included an intercept try with like 2 minutes to go by the Warriors. So we're pretty comfortable there. The Dogs, sort of dismissing the doubts about whether they can play in wet weather. Very comprehensive win by the Bulldogs. And the Warriors have fallen outside of the top 4, but I will talk about all the ladder implications, including a silver lining for Warriors fans. And as you know, I'm on you for a best bet. And then Sunday was like 2 games that were not super awe-inspiring on paper, but got 2 great contests. Now, the Titans just finding ways to blow games. Latrell did come back in. Padonis was right. He was dead on. Like, it was a great call to take plus 8.5. So great play by the Padonis. And he sent his apologies. He just wasn't able to get a tip through tonight. But, sorry, did I miss some other winners by the sharpshooters? Benny Williamson did hit Timoko at 325 in the Raiders game. Matty the Undertaker played Raiders over 24.5. That was a winner. So, and I think Nicole did miss out with a try score for the Finns, but still we had 3 out of 4 sharpshooters get up. As I say, Padonis, great call with Rabbitohs. Although I do think the Titans should have probably built a bigger lead. At 12-4, it looked like it was all Gold Coast, but it's typical Titans just not being able to capitalise. And if you wanted a season to be summed up in one moment, it's Jaden Campbell stepping back on the inside, beating the fullback, and he nearly falls over the line a metre to the right of the post, but for some reason that's not close enough to ground the ball and gets up again. I don't know if it's Indigenous round. Jaden's dad himself is a Titans legend, Indigenous legend, whether he had a little tribute celebration going through his mind, forgets to plant the ball, and Latrell, of all people, makes the massive effort play, dislodges the ball, 7 tackle set Rabbitohs. You end up winning the game by 2 points. And then, I mean, how would you like to be Des Hasler? He's coaching for his career. And what I mean by that is, yes, he's coached 500 games, but I don't know if Des gets another go around after this or whether Des just retires and sails off into the sunset. And that, like, Des's coaching career could end in 3 games' time or 4 games' time, right? But if the Titans win a few, maybe Des gets another season, and avoiding the spoon would make a massive difference. And you've got Jaden Campbell, who, bottles basically the butchered try of the year, but then has the integrity to not stay down when he's hit in the face with like 90 seconds to go in front of the post. And you take your hat off to Campbell and say, we hate seeing players stay down, but he copped one across the chops, the whole stadium groaned. It's sad. Like, if Campbell stayed down, it would have been a penalty Titans. Who knows, may not have won, but I just like, how's Des feeling? Like, thanks for having great integrity and spirit of the game by not staying down at the end. I wish you, I wish you had a bit more spirit for the game when you got in the in goal and were sort of showboating or skylarking instead of just grounding the ball. Obviously, a couple of dead set coach killers. And then, I didn't think it was controversial, but the Cowboys were actually awarded the winning try. 22-19 was the score before the bunker then took it away. And thanks to a Mitch Moses field goal, the Eels won 19-18. So, decent amount of fight by the Cowboys there. But Parramatta, once again, showing some really promising signs to end the year. And I thought there was no debate. People are talking about whether Moses took a dive. I don't even think it matters if Moses took a dive. The ball was caught on the inside shoulder of the lead runner, who was Nane. Like, even if Moses tried to push past the lead runner and make a half tackle, you couldn't give that try. That's a textbook obstruction for mine. So all you could really say is that the Cowboys at least gave an effort in this one. But and it's always exciting when a game comes down to the wire, but no need to say a great deal more than that. So let's just cruise straight into round 24, because we've got a grand final rematch straight away on Thursday night. How good is that? And tell me in the comments, oh, yeah, Moses blowing up at De Silva was pretty funny. And obviously, Moses demands the ball. He's the captain. He's the highest paid player. He's the best player on the team. He wants the ball in a tied game. I do sympathise with De Silva because it's sort of like I guess you're trying to pull a poker move on the defence, because everybody in the stadium knows the ball is going to Moses. So if you dummy from dummy half, you might actually be able to sell it and you might score the winning try. And then it's going to look like a genius play. But at the same time, when it doesn't work out on 5th tackle, then you're going to cop a spray. But it was pretty funny. And then question, what's your thoughts on the trainer getting involved on Sunday? Should there be a punishment? That one was, I think, a true, honest mistake. So Thursday night, tell me in the comments, is this the grand final again this year, Panthers Storm? Obviously it was last year, and obviously it was at the beginning of before the Panthers dynasty. On Thursday night, Penrith are a 4.5-point favourite. Penrith have climbed from 17th to 4th over the space of 11 weeks, which has included 9 straight wins and a couple of byes. But the thing is, just because the Panthers have ascended this far, and no doubt because we all know that Penrith has the capability and deserves to be in the top 4, I just want to say Penrith are not assured to remain in the 4. And the reason I say that is because Penrith is 1 point ahead of New Zealand, 3 points ahead of Sharks and Broncos, who are both favourites this weekend. If Penrith loses, then obviously Brisbane or Cronulla or both are within a point. New Zealand could actually climb back above Penrith. And Penrith's next 3 opponents, Melbourne, Canberra, Canterbury, so obviously they still need to keep winning to actually, it's not like the good work's going to be all undone, because now Penrith's definitely going to be in the finals, and many of us doubted they'd make it, understandably, when they were 17th after round 12. But you want to be in the 4 to really give yourself a best chance to push for a 5th premiership, and Penrith still need to win this game as much as any of the previous 9. But there's that other layer to it, that because the Panthers have to play all these top 4 teams in the next 3 weeks, don't you think teams like Melbourne, Canberra, Canterbury really don't want to share a top 4 spot with Penrith, because that's the last team they want to play? So it's like double motivation, that these teams already have their own business to take care of. Melbourne wants to finish top 2. They need to keep winning for that, obviously. But you also might want to deny Penrith or sort of halt this winning streak. So in saying all that, we talked about how Penrith were way too much for the Knights. It's the same 17 in this one, with Yeo remaining sidelined. However, for the Storm, Pappenhausen has got a concussion and he's out. And that means Nick Meaney goes to 1 and Seve is in the centres. I'm going to just slightly change my screen there. I've made myself small. I think that's better. You see less of my face and you see more of the players on screen. Melbourne really missed Big Nelson in the grand final last year, but he's been a little out of favour this season. Played Q Cup last weekend and is in the reserves. Could come into contention on Thursday. Now, it's the second encounter between these sides this year. So if you recall, they already met in Melbourne early in the year. It was the game where Cleary got injured really early on, and Penrith actually still managed to make it interesting, had a second half lead before the Storm surged ahead. So you could say that was some semblance of revenge served, but I'm sure Melbourne wants to double up and test themselves against the form side of the comp, not to mention, as I said before, try to halt the Penrith's premiership momentum here. I don't have a play on this game. I saw someone saying surely either team 1 to 12. Like, on one hand, I'm looking at Melbourne saying 4.5 points is too many for the Storm. That I think Melbourne has the better forward pack, and like that might be debatable. Let me know if you disagree as you look at the starting forwards on the screen. But with Yeo missing, I give the edge to Melbourne. But then I look at the halves, and you've got no Jerome Hughes, and obviously no Pappy. It's such a big difference. And Farlongos still remains unavailable. Is there enough strike in this Melbourne side to score on the Panthers? I think you could play either team 1 to 12 if you like Melbourne, because I don't think Melbourne has enough firepower to win 13 plus. But I do think that Penrith actually could win this 13 plus. Like, I wouldn't be that shocked at all. For Melbourne, obviously, where are the points coming from? You're going to be looking at Money, Wishy, Harry Grant. You've got that Coates versus To'o matchup. Remember that contest in the air, and I said that should be a penalty try. People said you're dreaming in Origin 1. But based on the latest interpretations, that definitely would have been a penalty try. That's a weapon, Xavier Coates, that the Storm can always go to. So, look, Melbourne has a chance for sure, but Penrith's got to be favoured in this one, and I think the market is very fair. It's a shame not all the stars are out in this one, but you know what? I do have a feeling this won't be the last time these sides meet in 2025. And Nicole has a play for us on this game. Let's have a listen.
Hey everyone, it's Nicole from Wiki here. I'll go out with the pick first. Anytime try scorer Stefano Utoikamanu paying $21 on Bet365. I know I roll out some roughies that probably seem unrealistic. Yes, he's playing the Panthers, but all the other bookies have him around the $10 mark. I think our model is going to have him around $15, which I think fair price is around that mark, like maybe 12, 13-ish. But you're getting $21 on 365. Excellent price. He scores a try every 7.5 NRL games, so almost triple the price if you just went by his career stats. Good luck, punt responsibly. Google Wiki Linktree, Discord with over 5,000 people, odds comparison tools. It's all free, and we should be able to roll out the Wiki app, finally, the mobile app this weekend. So good luck, punt responsibly, everyone.
Thanks as always to Nicole. Let's move to Friday. Warriors minus 4.5 point favourites hosting the Dragons. So New Zealand fans, I sort of touched on it there, but let me give you a bit of hope. You have lost 5 of the last 7 games. You have slipped out of the 4. Everyone, including myself, 2 or 3 months ago, declared you were secure in that. So sorry, obviously a bit has gone wrong, losing games you should never have lost. Like, you're below Penrith right now. You've lost to Penrith's B team during Origin at home. That's why you're behind Penrith right now, but also losing Barnett after game 1 Origin, losing Metcalf 2 or 3 weeks later. Life is not fair. Footy's not fair. On the bright side, the 4 remaining games for the Warriors are Dragons at home, Titans away, revenge spot, Eels at home, and Manly away to end the season. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb somewhat and say, New Zealand, if you win 4 out of 4, you will actually still finish in the top 4. I mentioned before, Penrith's next 3, Storm, Raiders, Dogs. You have a great opportunity to catch Penrith. I don't think Penrith's going to finish the year winning 13 straight. Not that they are not capable, but the likelihood is Penrith's going to drop 1, if not 2. So you still have everything that you set out to achieve this season in front of you. And the Warriors will definitely be favourites the next 3 weeks. And if the Warriors have actually won 3 in a row, they'd probably be favourites to finish top 4 with a win at 4 Pines. In addition, since I'm giving you some good news, New Zealand fans, Egan has overcome his shoulder injury. He's back. Tanner Boyd is in at 7 for Tamari Martin. Capewell is out, though, so Lecker starts in the second row. As for St. George, this is a team that's just playing for pride. And in fairness, the Dragons have displayed a great deal of that and won their local derby, despite several moments that went against the joint venture, to be fair. Sully and Laurie are out, though, and I'm playing New Zealand despite the fact that I know I have faded the Dragons nearly every week and that grittiness has defied me more often than not. It is as simple as there's not that much between these two teams, but there's so much more to play for the home side. And I will back a team in an all-in spot, expecting that I'm going to get my money's worth. Whereas for the Dragons, they've just played their 2 all-ins. Like, to beat the Raiders at home, you're facing top of the table at home. Then a week later, your rival in the Sharks, who are another side that's definitely finals caliber, and you pull the upset on both occasions. It's tough to bring that level of intensity across the Tasman, I believe. And I mentioned Egan being back. Of course, Fisher-Harris had been out for New Zealand, got in last week. Yeah, you might tell me New Zealand are just completely out of form and didn't look good against the Dogs, but Canterbury's a genuine contender who were really up for the game last week. Nobody would have looked that good against Canterbury. And St. George are not on that level. And the thing about the Dragons, you worry that they'll drag you into the mud, try and beat you on effort. But as I say, this is the kind of game that the Warriors simply cannot be beaten on effort in this game, surely at home, given the stakes. So that's why I'm playing the race to 20 points at $1.80. And we do have another clip that I haven't viewed yet, but it's from Benny Williamson on this game.
G'day, TryPod fam. As always, thanks to the lads for having me on. Pretty lucky with last week's bet, except Chris swooping on a loose ball late in the game to pick up a try at $3.20. This week, we're going to run with Clint Gutherson at $3.50 on Bet365. He's got a fantastic strike rate against the Warriors. It's around 71%. And the Warriors' weak edge is their right edge significantly. The Dragons' strong edge is their left. Gutho's been doing some fantastic work on that left side. I can see him finishing off a left side sweep, going over for $3.50. Best of luck if you follow. Let's see if we can crack another winner. Cheers, lads.
Sorry if I said Timoko for Benny last week. It was Seb Chris. Did Gutho score last week in the end? I feel like he did. He did get one, didn't he? Because he also was going over to score for all money and then passed to the debutant Buchanan. So I can see that logic, though I don't love it when Benny's picking a try scorer sort of against my best bet. But I've got race to 20. It doesn't mean the Dragons can't score a try or two in that one. Later, yes, Ryan saying Gutho got one later. I think he got one supplied back off Hayden Buchanan. So I look at this round and I thought, geez, after Panthers Storm, it doesn't get any better than that. But this is a hell of a game later Friday night. Roosters, Bulldogs, and the Roosters are 2.5-point underdogs. I'm taking under 42.5 on Ladbrokes and Eds, $1.90. So I'm playing the total under. We'll get to why. But the Chooks come in, they are 9th, but pulled off such an important win against the Finns and within a few points of differential as well. So they're equal on the ladder in terms of competition points. And in fact, the Roosters will be in the top 8 for at least a day if they do continue their form after not only dispatching the Finns, but you look at the Roosters' draw, they had back-to-back games against Manly and the Dolphins, the two teams that they were in hot contention for the 8th spot that was up for grabs. Now, Wong did get a concussion. That was a massive hit. Was that a concussion from basically whiplash? Because I thought it was clean as a whistle from Donahue. It does mean Radley starts at lock. And the Dogs demolished the Warriors, basically, as I say, a late intercept try there. It wasn't really close. Same 17 for Canterbury with Tracy still out, though he's in the reserves. The Roosters have to win more games than the Dolphins in the final 4 weeks, right? So every game is so important. And as for the Dogs, they're every chance of being top 2, especially if Melbourne does lose and they are underdogs on Thursday night. The Dogs could actually pull up to top 2. And why is that important? Because you can avoid a trip south to either Melbourne or Canberra, and you can play potentially 2 home finals. Well, you can play every finals game at a call because that's where the grand final would be as well. The Chooks were red hot at Suncorp, fully switched on. And to be fair, they had that intensity against Manly. It just didn't show up with as many tries because the conditions were diabolical. I look at this Roosters team. They are too good to miss the finals, but somebody good is going to miss the finals. It's either going to be Roosters or Dolphins, most likely. And it is around 50-50, and that's my opinion, but that's also the market reflects that right now. Okay, so if the Roosters have a 50-50 chance to make the finals, and this game is kind of like a 50-50 game, then, that's what it's going to come down to. It's going to come down to a tight game that goes one way or another. And I haven't bet on either side in this because I like both these teams, and I think they're both near full complement of players, and they're both just pushing into sort of finals form and intensity right now. The Dogs have transitioned away from Marnie with Hayward starting at 9. I mean, the Roosters, I was nervous last week when they came out with that absolute power pack. Lenu started next to Collins. Nafahu White was in the run-on side as well. Now, this week, the little shuffle there with Spenny reverted back to the bench, but that means both sides have got impact on the pine as well. I can't split these teams, so if I had to bet a side, I would take the +2.5 with the Roosters because I think it's anyone's game. So I did look, what about Dogs under 22.5? And I just couldn't get a good enough price on that. But then I thought, I still back the Dogs defense here. I don't think that they're giving up more than 3 tries either, to be fair. So much on the line. Friday Night Lights, 2 gun teams in form. Finals intensity, as I said, I'll be surprised if either team really gets into the 20s. So give me the unders. And you know what? That's what I'm cheering first and foremost, under 42.5. But Canterbury, if you did want to win, I'd really appreciate that as well. Help my friendly Finns out. Let's move to Saturday at Shark Stadium. It's Cronulla against the Gold Coast Titans. The Sharkies are a 10.5-point favourite. I can only play the Sharks, right? I'm sure I'm not surprising you saying that. Off a very disappointing defeat to the Dragons. There's still time to make something of the year for the Sharkies. Ramian is out, Hirossi in. Nikora is a big loss, though. He did run, for a guy that runs the best lines of any edge forward, he ran a bad line that sort of cost a try because it was an obstruction play. late in that game, which somewhat foiled the Sharks' efforts. It was a funny game because each team just kept giving each other more opportunities to get back in the game, but Cronulla just refused to take it. Like even Nico Hines taking an intercept with 3 minutes to go. You score there, you're down 2. You could still pinch that, but he wasn't fast enough, and the Sharkies blew it. Nevertheless, Nikora is a big loss for this one. And then I look at the Titans, as someone says, no way the Sharks will win. There's definitely a way the Sharks win this, but you must be a Titans fan and you must respect the fearless leader Tino coming back into the team. In the headlines this week that Tino's going to test free agency, so I've got to do a little slight tangent on this. Was Tino not given like an $8 million deal recently? So is there a lot of player options? Is that what I'm missing? Because I thought Tino was locked up, and I actually thought the Titans overpaid for him to keep him. I mean, is $8 million over 7 years and the captaincy not enough? I would feel a bit slighted if I was the Titans, but I have to tell you, and I know there's not many Titans fans out there listening, but maybe Clarkey's out there, Cole. I think you're probably better off without him in the sense that you've got Perth coming into the comp, you've got PNG, you've got several teams that would love to have Tino, and I know like gun middle forwards who are the right side of 25 or 26 that don't grow on trees, but he's going to be the highest paid forward in the comp because of the bidding war when Tino hits the open market. And when you get a prop who is on over $1 million a year and is the highest paid forward in the comp, it's basically impossible for that player to outperform the contract, but it can be a disaster if they drop off. Look at Taumalolo. Look at Tino doing his ACL last year. You know, he's going to be in Origin. There's a chance he gets hurt in Origin or misses games. Like, now you might argue to me, it's not that Tino's going to give you $1.2 million of value, every season, but it's the leadership as well. He sets the standard. The playing group respects him, and other players play better. It goes beyond Tino's production. And I would argue back to you, like, Tino's been the captain and he's been at the Titans for 4 or 5 years. Have they ever accomplished anything? Like, and I'm not saying it's Tino's fault. I'm just saying it's not like having Tino there's this game changer that makes them, that raises the baseline to a minimum of a finals contender. Like, they're the favourites to win the spoon right now. So if that, comes to pass, then, at least that's money that can be spent elsewhere. You've still got Fodawaker, who's also back this week, as I get back into this game, the nitty-gritty. So while I thought I would play the Sharks here, I've got a Titans team that's off 2 crushing defeats basically on the siren. They are a team with nothing to lose, though. They have shown fight, which is something at this point in the year. Some teams do give up sometimes, especially at that end of the ladder. And though there's been no reward, and sometimes a team fights to the death and just falls short, and then the next week they just can't get to that level of effort again. But with the key troops coming back in, and you've got Cronulla who's feeling the heat, expected to win, slightly under strength with, a couple of really important players missing. That's why I won't play the Sharkies this week. It's a double-digit line. I'm going to leave it. Now, having said that, I'm not playing plus 10.5 either because I still think the Sharkies will be tougher and they'll probably be leading by 6 or 8 points, in the second half. And if the Titans can't match motors, that lead can turn into 20. And I'm not going to be surprised at all if the Sharkies win by 20 or 30 points. And I do think Cronulla gets the 2 points in front of their home faithful, but that's why I sort of had conflicting reasoning to take either side, and that's why I've left it alone. So let's move to the Battle of Brisbane, 5:30 Saturday night at Suncorp. Broncos, Dolphins. Brisbane is a 3.5-point favourite. Both sides need to pick themselves up after devastating losses. Now, Brisbane's loss hurt more so than missing the 2 competition points and a shot at top 4 because you lost both halves in one play. An intercept where Brisbane could have nearly scored, as I said before. And then Cobbo did his hammy second half just to compound it. Now, I have to say, I hate injuries, but I can't lie, that was fortunate for the Finns because it keeps the Dolphins competitive in this game where I was sort of looking at the the calendar and at the schedule go, like, I don't really see how we're going to beat Brisbane at this point in the year. The question mark as team lists came out 2 hours ago was which way is Madge going to go with his halves? And I, for one, we all probably knew Hunt will be 7. And I did think give Walters a chance at 6. He played plenty of playmaker in the Queensland Cup before he sort of broke into first grade. Like Walters was not a natural 9 coming through the grades. It's just been more so that's where the opportunity's been, and he's a versatile player and he's taken to it really well. And I know people say, well, now they're losing that sort of dynamic threat, and obviously you're losing his versatility off the bench. But the other thing that Brisbane's not short of is hookers. So since you have a good 3rd and 4th string hooker, you might as well use them. So now Paik starts at rake, Smoothie at 14. I know Staggs was an option at 6, but you still want to keep the centre position strong. Arthur still can't find a spot in the team. Karapani comes in for Cobbo. For the Finns, Molo suspended. Nichols starts. So Kenny Bromwich, you sort of forget he's still on this team. He hasn't played NRL in 4 months. 3 months. Yeah, 3 months. Kenny Bromwich is on the bench. Avarillo is at centre. Nafahu is on the wing, which is actually how they lined up last week. And the Finns had very little success, but Tavita Nafahu did score the Finns only 2 tries. And I'll be honest, I think if you're betting into this game, you're only looking at Brisbane, because it feels to me that the Finns' forward injuries have caught up. I've sort of flagged this weeks ago, and the Finns kept winning a few games when I thought that forward pack was too thin, that the defence was deplorable last week. That's a big issue that has to be remedied. Of course, that's why I'm sort of glad that Brisbane's without 2 headline halves, because I don't think the Dolphins can contain Brisbane, but that does even the equation up a little bit. But again, losing Herbie, I mean, we could have had Herbie up against Katoni, which would have been a blockbuster head-to-head. It might be a sellout. If not, it's going to be close to. It's going to be a huge crowd with high tension. So I would say this is a final style. And what's crossed my mind is that it's not impossible that these two meet in the finals as well in the knockout, like in a knockout game, whether it be 6-7 or 5-8. But I'm not going to play unders, even though I would lean to unders with a final style game. I know my Finns well, and the thing about my Finns is they're a bit like the Cowboys. Attack is the best form of defense. We need the footy and we need to be scoring, or else sometimes our opposition will be scoring. As a Finns fan, I'm going to start saying we need the hammer to outplay Walsh. He was picked ahead of Walsh. I know Walsh had a bit of a knee complaint, but he was picked ahead of Walsh. So Walsh, is going to want to prove a point in terms of, I'm talking about Origin 3, of course. We, the Dolphins, need this 21-year-old sensation, Izzy Katoa, to outperform the 35-year-old wily veteran Hunt. Like, that's a non-negotiable. Izzy has to be the best half on the field, and Hammer has to be the best fullback on the field for the Dolphins to win this game. And it's weeks like this where it really could pay off. Some people question why you sign someone like Ben Hunt. It really could pay off in a week like this if Benny Hunt comes in, steers the ship, and steers Brisbane to a win. And Brisbane's got that bit more muscle in the forward pack and a bit more strike in the outside backs for starting off their sets. So I think Brisbane's going to win. I do think Brisbane should probably be favourite by more than 3.5. I'd have made this line closer to 6. So a bit like last week, you could tell me I should be on Brisbane. But given that there's a bit more uncertainty, like I don't know how well this new Broncos spine is going to click. And there is a bounce back factor when a team like the Finns has had a terrible loss, that you do get like often a really focused all-in performance the following week. So I'm leaving the game alone. And of course, I'm cheering wholeheartedly for the mighty red and white. On Saturday night, it's Rabbitohs Eels. The Eels are 3.5-point favourites at Allianz. And they both had a great effort on Sunday and both got narrow victories, the Rabbitohs and the Eels. For South Sydney, Latrell was all the difference. He played centre, leaving Gray at fullback, and that's where he's named again this week. Hubner is out. Cody Walker is one to watch. He's in the reserves. Latrell was named in the reserves last week, did play. Alex Johnston is 4 tries away from the record, so has a great chance of registering in this game. Like the record's probably safe for another week or two. but of course we're all noting that each week. Paris names the same 17 that squeaked by the Cows, but Ayongi is a chance of joining the team from the extended squad. And two teams that should just let it fly. So I did consider overs. The total is 47.5 though. And I thought Paris defense is improving each week. You keep Brisbane. I can't remember what they won at Suncorp. I can't remember how many Brisbane scored, but Brisbane only had about 3 tries, kept Melbourne to 3 tries, kept the Cows to 3 tries last week. They're not really playing overs style games, and Souths are not full strength in their own spine. Of course, whether or not Walker plays, Whiten's still out, right? So I've got Para being the rightful favourite in my view because they are a bit more settled. But if Cody Walker's named, it gets closer to pick 'em. So you could play Souths with the plus if you think Walker's going to be in, or if you hear. It looks clear that Souths are motivated to avoid the spoon because, again, you don't really need to play Walker or Latrell for that matter. And there's whispers Cam Murray could still come out and play this year. You could put those guys on ice. You could shut them down for the year, but it shows something about the spirit of the team that these guys want to come back and want to fight, right? Even in the absence of results. But finally, a result did come for South. So a game with very little at stake can go either way, and I'm happy to pass and move to Sunday. Tigers, Manly, and this one's also at Allianz. And the Tigers are a 4.5 point underdog, off a bye, and that's after the Dogs win, of course. We've got, sorry, I can't read my own note there. Stafford Toa. That was what I was missing. Stafford Toa. Oh, what's happened now? Lost my shared screen. Sorry, I'll try and bring it back up. So Toa had been out and rejoins the team. Taylor May was in concussion protocol. We'll see if we get that back. That's pretty much I like to have that on the screen. Once again, takes attention away from my face and gives you more information. Sorry, I sort of lost my train of thought there. But Seyfarth is also out. Twal is at lock. Bolle starts at prop. And then for Manly, Gerbo, nasty concussion. But his brother, Ben, does return from concussion protocol. Lehigh Hopewadi is also in. But this time, Lehigh was on the wing with Turbo remaining at fullback. And Manly were in the fight, as I mentioned, in Canberra for a fair while. This is an absolute must-win for the Seagulls. They're looking at this saying, we can win this. We'll play the Dolphins next week at home. We can win that. We can still make the finals. And that's true for sure. But I do like what the Tigers are doing in terms of building this identity. They're such a better team with Buller back in there. Dewey is a difference maker at 7. It frees up Jerome Luai. And we've got the Tigers, members, obviously with it being a Tigers home game, so there's motivation to play well. I just don't see where there's a clear advantage to the Seagulls. Am I seeing it wrong? Why are people telling me the Seagulls are going to comfortably win this one? So I'm not sure, just in terms of player for player with the matchup. So unless you're going to say, well, Manly's still in the finals hunt, and so it's a must win, and West don't really care. But I do think there's motivation there for the Tigers because I don't buy into, if they avoid a 4th straight spoon, it's a success. No, narrowly avoiding the spoon and still being bottom 4 does not mean you're successful. It just means you weren't the very worst of 17 teams again. I think every position West can finish higher than last. It is important. And I think the team is buying in around Benji. So I've admitted that I don't really rate Manly as high as other people. So I've got that awareness that when I want to bet against Manly, I don't do it automatically every week. But I can't see why Manly's really a clear favourite here. I nearly just played plus 4.5, which it is basically everywhere. But as I've explained before, I will take the 2.5 being the more value in that number of losing by 2 at halftime than losing by 4 over 80 minutes is basically what it comes down to. And I predict that by game time, the line will be 2.5 or 3.5, and that halftime line will be a 0.5 point or a 1.5, and the plus 2.5, we'll be paying with $1.60. That's my prediction. But as I said, playing with fire, West will probably be down a try. We lose the best bet, and then West come back and wins outright. That's my luck this year. But honestly, I've given you my best bet, which is what I think is the best hope for a successful wager in that one. And the Undertaker has a play in this game too. And of course, he is a diehard Seagulls fan, but let's have a listen to whether he's backing his own side.
G'day guys, Matty here. Going to back up fading my team Manly for my bet of the week this week against the Tigers. The Manly team total is 26.5. It's $1.87 on Bet365. We're taking the under. Manly have scored 20 points total across their last 3 games. The injuries have finally caught up with them. There's not much left of the forward pack. Manly could still score 5 tries if Garrick's 3 out of 5 conversions or less. So there's still a bit of room to hit this even if they score 5 tries. But I just don't see the Manly attack firing at the moment. So I'm going to fade my boys again. It hurts me to do, but hey, good luck.
So there you go. Even the Undertaker is going against his side. So that does give me an extra layer of confidence too. And that's another good way to play Manly, is playing them with the under team total. Last game, Cowboys Knights in Townsville. Cowboys are a -6.5, though I've also seen 5.5 in locations. So, of course, play the right side of that number, depending on whether you're on the plus or the minus. Once again, there's next to nothing on the line. The Cowboys did show some resilience in Sydney, but come up short. Hess has been one of the high-effort leaders. He will be missed serving suspension here, but McLean is back, as is Michele. Vitano, I don't know anything about this guy debuting at fullback for Newcastle. You think of, I'm not even going to remember all these guys. Like Hunt has played fullback. Gagai, of course, Sharp played fullback. Who's the other guy that actually did really well at fullback last year and now he's in the Super League? Like the Knights have had too many new players debuting at fullback or playing fullback in the last 2 years for a team who has the highest paid player in the comp, and he is a fullback in, of course, Kalen Ponga. But Gagai, was all effort at the back, but is not a natural fullback, and this week is reverted into the centres. Frizzell starting at lock. Crossland is out. Jones and Matt Arthur are recalled to the bench. I don't love betting on games where I do see it as quite high variance, because Miller as well. Miller was a few years ago, wasn't he? He was the sevens convert. He's not the guy I'm thinking of. Someone else will give you bonus points if you can name. The other fella that I think, did he debut against the Storm last year at fullback? And was actually, a bit of a handful as well. I don't like betting on games where it's hard to visualize how it's going to go. Armstrong is the player I'm thinking of. Thank you, average footy fan. So, quite a few players, and it's good that you got that nursery to draw upon, but it's not great for continuity. However, I am just simply playing overs in a game between two teams where nothing's on the line. It's an afternoon game. The Cowboys are highly unreliable in defense, but they are still threatening an attack. And you might say, well, what have the Knights got in attack? And you want to play them over. And I have a feeling it'll be quite painful watching this game when the Knights have the ball. But I still think they'll come into the game and want to play positive, enterprising footy. This was the scene of the crime where these sides met in the finals. Can you remember that? These were both in the finals last year. And it was a Kalen Ponga draw and pass had he been able to execute away from a Knights upset, in fact. And not that game factors into the way I see this one, because I think it's going to play out very differently with so much less on the line. But that's why I'm playing the overs. I was just remembering, it is kind of crazy. Both these sides have fallen away. Both their coaches are under a fair bit of pressure. You could say that the coach being under pressure means the teams will fight harder, but that's if you assume that the coach is getting the best out of his players, which I don't think either coach has this season. I expect plenty of tries, probably 8+ does the trick between these two teams, who are both looking at barley flights as much as anything else. And that's how I see the round. Those are my 4 best bets. Appreciate your company as always. Please hit like on this video. It does make a difference, or drop a comment. Keep the conversation going. Let me know what you're liking in terms of your favorite plays this week or what you think of mine. And enjoy your week. I'll be back in 7 days to wrap it, see how we went, and do it all again. Lego.